It sounds like we are getting closer and closer to World War III the way Trump and Putin are talking. Watching the news in English is a great way to improve your English. But let's face it, they use some very difficult vocabulary. In this English lesson, we are going to watch a news clip together, and then I will come back and teach all of those difficult terms. If that sounds great to you, please go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and let's watch that clip together.
So now new this morning, President Zelensky is saying that Ukraine's defense minister spoke on the phone with the head of Russia's negotiating team in Istanbul. The Ukrainian leader pushing for his country to be invited to the upcoming NATO summit, saying by not doing so it would be a victory for Putin over the alliance. But Putin wants in writing that NATO will never expand in order to get peace in Ukraine.
We have quite a few things to talk about. I think close to 30 terms. And the first one I would like to teach you is summit. And that is a meeting between two leaders of countries, and they are usually very powerful countries. World leaders met at a summit to talk about the war. And I did ask AI to create an image of what a summit might look like. Here we have the flags of the United States and Russia, and maybe a person who looks like Putin, and maybe a person who looks like former President Joe Biden. Next, we have alliance, and there you can see are the flags of the United States and the EU, or the European Union, as we say in English. Let's talk about what alliance is. It's a group of countries or people who agree to help each other. NATO is an alliance that supports Ukraine. NATO is an alliance made up of the United States, Canada, and mostly European countries.
So when it comes now, as President Trump warns Putin to think carefully about his next move, posting this, what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it were not for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia, and I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. Dan Hoffman knows it all too well, studied Putin all of his life, lived in Moscow, station chief there. And Dan, good morning to you. Good morning. We've reached a critical point here, I believe, in this war. And if Putin does not want peace, what are Trump's options? What are Europe's options? Where does the potential for the fork in the road take us?
What if you hear the idiom playing with fire? It has nothing to do with actual fire. It means doing something very dangerous. Putin said the West is playing with fire by helping Ukraine. And in the picture, we definitely have an example of someone who is playing with fire. She is driving and texting at the same time. That could result in an accident. As they say in the newscast, the words between Putin and Trump have reached a critical point. I mean, what is the next step? I hope it isn't war. But a critical point means a very important moment when things could change. The war has reached a critical point. Later, we are going to talk about how Germany is getting more involved in Ukraine. You might know that a fork is something you could eat with, but this is another English idiom, a fork in the road. It means a moment when you must choose between two paths or two options. Europe is at a fork in the road. Help Ukraine more or stop? In the picture, it looks like we have a couple and they do not appear to be getting along. Maybe they just had a fight. Their marriage had reached a critical point. They were at a fork in the road. Should they get divorced or stay together?
We've reached a critical point here, I believe, in this war. And if Putin does not want peace, what are Trump's options? What are Europe's options? Where does the potential for the fork in the road take us?
Yeah, Bill, I think it's important not only to see the world through the twisted KGB eyes of Vladimir Putin, but also to see ourselves through Putin eyes, because Putin is a KGB guy who's sizing up the president and his administration. Putin knows that President Trump promised to end the war within a day when he was on the campaign trail. He knows that the United States would like to expand our commercial relationship with Russia, and he's certainly well aware of the contentious relationship between President Trump and President Zelensky.
In the newscast, they mention the KGB and they mention how Putin used to be part of the KGB. Let's talk about what the KGB is. It is the old Russian spy agency. Putin worked for the KGB before becoming president. Now, here we are going to talk about two different ways we can use twisted in English. This first way is not the way they used it in the newscast. It means turned into a spiral, which is kind of like a circle or curled shape. The pretzel, and in the picture here, we have a pretzel and it is twisted. The pretzel had a twisted shape, like the dough was looped and crossed before it was baked. But this is the way they use twisted in the newscast. It means very wrong or sick in the mind. The bombing of schools was twisted and evil. I would like to stop the English lesson just for a second to tell you that I am offering private conversations for you to improve your English. I know sometimes it is hard to find a speaking partner, and if you would like me to be your speaking partner, that is possible. You can choose 30-minute or 60-minute English conversations. I can also record that conversation and send it to you later. If you would like more information, you can click that QR code or take a look. There is a link in the comment section and also in the description. And please let me take a moment right now to thank you for clicking on this English lesson. I know there are a lot of English teachers out there and you chose me. Sizing up. Here we have an English phrasal verb. Those things are always tricky, right? Sizing up. It means looking at something carefully to understand it. The US is sizing up how strong Russia is. In the picture, we have two fighters and they look to be sizing each other up, seeing how strong each other is before actually fighting. Commercial. When we use it like this, it basically means not the military. So the official definition is not the military, it's related to business. A commercial airplane was hit by mistake. So in the picture, you can see that is clearly not a military plane. That is a commercial plane used for transporting passengers, not soldiers.
He knows that the United States would like to expand our commercial relationship with Russia, and he's certainly well aware of the contentious relationship between President Trump and President Zelensky. Putin probably thinks he has some leverage right now to carry on this war. The question, the penultimate question that I think President Trump might want to be asking Director of CIA Ratcliffe is, would Putin even be interested ever in stopping the war? This is Putin's war. He's spilled massive amounts of blood and treasure to topple the government of Ukraine, and so far he's failed. I'm not so sure that the war is going to end until Putin is no longer in the Kremlin. I think that's the question we need to be asking.
Wow.
And then a follow-up, what can we do?
Here we have a very advanced English word. It is an adjective. You might see this on the IELTS or TOEFL exam, and it is contentious. That's how we pronounce that word, contentious. It means causing a lot of arguing or fighting. The plan to send weapons was very contentious. And that couple in the picture looks like they are having a contentious discussion. It doesn't look to be friendly. They also use leverage in the newscast. That means power or control over someone in a situation. Russia is using gas prices as leverage. President Trump mentioned he might put 500% tariffs on Russian goods coming into the United States. That is definitely leverage he can use against Putin. If Trump did that, it would definitely hurt the Russian economy. Carry on. Here we have another phrasal verb. It means to keep going or to continue. I hope you carry on with your English learning. The army will carry on with the mission. Okay, this is a super advanced English word. I use this word sometimes in my daily conversations, but I know the listener that I'm speaking with might not know the word penultimate. Penultimate, it means second to last. This is the penultimate step before sending troops. Take a look at the picture. We have a calendar, and I'm not sure what language that is in the red, but the date, the 12th, is circled. So it looks like the 11th is the penultimate day before something happens. Hopefully it's a good thing. Please let me know in the comments, do you know what language that is? They mentioned the CIA in the news broadcast. Let's talk about what that is. The U.S. spy agency. We talked about the KGB before. This is the U.S.'s spy agency. The CIA is watching what Putin will do next. We have topple next. I can tell you in the picture, that tree has toppled. You might also hear the English phrasal verb toppled over, but it can also mean to force a leader or government to fall. Some countries want to topple Putin's regime. Regime is another way to say like a bad government.
He spilled massive amounts of blood and treasure to topple the government of Ukraine, and so far he's failed. I'm not so sure that the war is going to end until Putin is no longer in the Kremlin. I think that's the question we need to be asking.
Wow.
And then a follow-up, what can we do to test that? And then we've got arms that we can provide Ukraine, Patriot air defense and offensive munitions. So there's a lot more that we can do to test that hypothesis.
They mention the Kremlin in the newscast. I just want to make sure you know what the Kremlin is in English. It's the main government of Russia. The Kremlin made a strong statement about NATO. It's kind of like the White House, but don't get it confused with the Red Square or St. Basil's Cathedral. That building on the right is not the center of government. It's just a very famous landmark on Red Square in Moscow. Follow up, this can be an English phrasal verb or a noun. We will talk about both. But in the newscast, they use it like this: to check or do something after a first step. Leaders said they will follow up after the summit. In the picture, you have a doctor and a patient. The patient was probably in the doctor's office before. Maybe the doctor didn't like what they saw on an x-ray or something, so they asked the patient to follow up with them. In other words, come back into the office at a later date. But the patient could have a follow-up with their doctor. That way, we use it as a noun. Maybe earlier in the week, you asked your boss about something, and he or she said, get back to me later in the week. So maybe on Friday, you would follow up with your boss to see if they have made a decision. A proposal, that is an idea or plan someone gives to others. A business proposal is quite common. Russia rejected a peace proposal. You might also hear proposal when it comes to weddings. That is when one person asks another person to marry them. We might also use the verb propose. He proposed to his girlfriend. Munitions. Munitions, these are bullets, bombs, and other weapons. The U.S. sent more munitions to Ukraine. And later in the lesson, we will talk about two different types of missiles. Hypothesis. Hypothesis. Maybe not easy to say. We often use this term when it comes to science, but in the newscast, they used it like this: an idea or guess that needs to be tested. His hypothesis is that Russia wants to expand the war. The man in the newscast also says he doesn't think this war is going to end as long as Putin is in the Kremlin. That is pretty scary to me.
Okay, a couple things here. The deputy chair of Russia's Security Council responded to Trump's truth and said, regarding Trump's words about Putin playing with fire and really bad things happening to Russia, I only know of one really bad thing: World War III. I hope Trump understands this. You mentioned a number of things there. You know, what can you test? And you listed a number of things there. John Ratcliffe, head of CIA. What are his conversations all about? Overnight, you know, you have the German leader saying that we're going to strike deep into Russia now. And they did. There were drones that reportedly hit a number of different military installations that are building cruise missiles for the war. They're building drones for the war. So that is happening right now. But back to this point that you just mentioned there about Putin. You have to know what he is willing to accept to get peace. That's what you said. What do you think he wants?
Yeah.
Would get that.
So I think you know you're getting to Putin a little bit when you hear the nuclear rhetorical brinkmanship. When the Biden administration was talking about giving Ukraine the weapons they needed, when they needed them, that's when Putin's stalking horse, Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy national security advisor, was threatening nuclear war.
Okay, I need to practice my Russian pronunciation. Next, we have Dmitry Medvedev. Dmitry Medvedev. Please let me know in the comments how badly did I do with that. Putin has been the leader of Russia since 2000, but there were 4 years when he wasn't president. The Russian constitution did not allow him to continue to be president. So this guy, Dmitry Medvedev, was president for 4 years. Then the constitution changed, and I think Putin can be in power pretty much until he says, I don't want to be president anymore, or he dies. So Dmitry Medvedev is a very good friend of President Putin. Actually, some people have said I should not call Putin president because he really hasn't been elected. Please let me know in the comments, should I call him President Putin? Medvedev is a top Russian leader close to Putin. Dmitry Medvedev said war could spread to Europe. Super scary words there. Rhetorical. Said to make a point, not to be taken literally. Some think Putin's threat was just rhetorical. Let's hope that's the case. President Trump will often say things that are not supposed to be taken literally. Brinksmanship. Brinksmanship. That means pushing a situation to the edge of disaster. Here, that disaster would be war between Europe, probably NATO, Canada and the US would be involved, and Russia. Hopefully none of Russia's friends would get involved, but that sounds like World War III to me. Putin is using brinksmanship to scare the West. We don't need to spend a lot of time on stalking horse. I rarely hear this term, but since they used it in the newscasts, let's talk about it quickly. A stalking horse is a hidden plan or secret reason behind an idea. Some say the peace plan is just a stalking horse. In other words, Putin is talking peace while he is using that time to actually invade further into Ukraine. How about this example? The new rule was a stalking horse to distract people while the real changes were being made in secret. Oh, get is such a hard word in English. Here they used the phrase got to him, and that means made someone upset or emotional. Putin threatening war got to Biden. Maybe it scared him a little bit. The news about the attack really got to him. The Javelin missile. This is the first of two missiles we will talk about. But a Javelin missile is a U.S. weapon that can destroy tanks. And in the picture, soldiers can carry around Javelin missiles on the battlefield. Ukrainian soldiers used a Javelin missile to stop Russian tanks. Later on, we'll talk about the Taurus missile, which is much bigger, and it will be coming from Germany.
But look, Putin's strategic objective has never changed. He wants to topple the government of Ukraine and install a puppet regime. What we need to do is make it clear that's just not possible.
Strategic objective. Big words there. Strategic objective. An important goal during war. Capturing that city is a key strategic objective. Okay, in the picture, that is what we call a puppet in English. We need to know puppet so we can talk about a puppet regime. We talked about regime earlier. That's another name for a bad government, but a puppet regime is a fake government controlled by another country. Russia may try to install a puppet regime in Ukraine. This might be controversial. Some say that Belarus is a puppet regime for Russia. Putin, I'm sure, would love to get rid of Zelensky and put a person in power that is more friendly with Russia. In the newscast, they talk about where the rubber meets the road. Obviously, that is an idiom. It has nothing to do with rubber or roads. It is the point where actions become real. At some point, all of this talk could lead to war. It will get much more serious. This is where the rubber meets the road. Leaders must act now.
What we need to do is make it clear that's just not possible. And where the rubber's going to meet the road is whether Putin will ever accept that. And I don't know the answer to that question, Bill, and I don't know whether we can know until we really take serious action against Russia in the form of economic pressure that we haven't taken so far, as well as military support to Ukraine. Now, President Zelensky's in Germany right now, and the Germans are talking about giving Ukraine the Taurus long-range ballistic missile. That would be a good thing for Ukraine to have in their arsenal.
Dan, thank you. Coming back real soon. Seems like we're escalating.
All right.
Someone's got to step back here. Otherwise, it's gonna go in a bad direction.
The Taurus missile, a powerful German missile that goes long distances. Right now, all of the weapons that the U.S. provides to Ukraine can only be used for defense purposes. They can't strike Moscow with these weapons. But it sounds like these new missiles could hit Moscow. That would definitely escalate the war or ramp up the war if that happens. Germany may send Taurus missiles to help Ukraine. Arsenal, that is a collection of weapons. Russia has a huge arsenal ready to use. Congratulations, you made it to the end of another rather long and rather difficult English lesson. Don't forget, if you would like to have a private one-on-one conversation to improve your English, there is a QR code for you. A huge shout out to channel members. Thanks for watching. See you next time.